right. We are recording a little early because I'm
That's
traveling tomorrow. So this will probably come out this weekend, hopefully, or maybe Monday. So hello from the past in the present.
For the future. For the future.
Yeah.
Took me for a little bit.
It's probably a good segue into if you want to get somebody the perfect present this year, why don't you get them the
Wow.
gift of
Congrats
Seeeks?
on that. Dude, that was amazing.
Yes.
That was
Yes.
great.
I won the internet.
That was good. It
Wasn't
was
that
very
good?
good. It was very
ABC,
good.
always be selling. So last episode, we were talking through a bunch of stuff. We kind of ended on vibe coding. I teased it a little bit. So we're going to talk about Seeeks this episode, which is a podcast post-production app that my company has built. I've talked about it a little bit here and there. I don't want this to be an ad. I'll just kind of talk through like what it is, why it is. If you're watching on video, we'll show some screens. I want to talk more about like how we did it, why we did it, but it's mostly vibe code. And I think that's the interesting piece of this. Like, yeah, anyone can go make a bunch of software. But I think showing that vibe code works and the thing works, like, you know, it's a software product you can buy today. It Seeks with 3 E's, SEEEKS.com. You're probably not the audience. You might be if you have a podcast. But, you know, this isn't a general population tool. This isn't something that has a mass appeal for a lot of people. It's a very specific audience with a very specific purpose involved, which is fine. Software works that way too. So yeah, this is Seeks, I guess, the web page, the homepage up here. It's a web tool. It will work on mobile. It will work as a PWA, a progressive web app. So you can like download quote unquote a version of the web app if your computer or phone, tablet, whatever supports that. We've talked about the last app we built, went to the App Store. I don't need to relive that.
Never
trauma.
again. Never again. Yeah.
Well, as we were talking before we started recording, and I might put this on the App Store because one of the pieces of technology that I used to build it does it for me. It's free, so to speak. Like you always have some pieces here and there, but the idea was to build this completely independent of any app store because of the amount of pain and suffering they put you through, especially as a small company, independent developer, whatever you want to call us. We don't have massive resources to fight Apple and Google every time they think there's a problem. The experience last time was, yeah, we had an app, it worked great. And then a couple months later, they're like, wow, we found this massive problem with your thing. And we're not going to really tell you what it is, or we're not going to tell you how to resolve it, but you got to. And then it's a lot of back and forth. And yeah. And then they'll like throw you off the App Store for some reason if you don't. So this runs on the good old internet.
Good old days of the internet. Yep.
Yeah. And like I said, it's all vibe coded. The UI pieces you're seeing are built with a tool called FlutterFlow. It's built off of a tool called Flutter from Google. It's a universal, in quotes, web and app framework. So it's a kind of a write once compile for the web, iOS, Android, Windows, Mac, Linux. I mean, pretty much any popular OS you can run on. There's trade-offs for that. It's not the right tool for everything, but if you are doing a lot of the heavy lifting on a server somewhere, which is what this is, it's a nice way to make a really nice UI. All the responsive, reactive stuff works across platforms. So if I want to publish this to the App Store, I hit a button, it goes up. There's a little bit more work to do with the company, Apple or Google, but that's pretty much it. You don't have to have 3 different versions of the software. You don't have to have 3 different development teams running it. And again, this isn't perfect for every problem, but for most stuff and the way that most applications work and the way that most companies are even set up, most companies don't have teams to do this. Like you have a person who's like in charge of Android and a person who's in charge of iOS, and the poor bastards have to figure out how to make the entire code base work differently. So yeah, so it's a web sign up. Again, it's a podcast post-production. So the idea with this is you record your podcast like we're doing now. You edit your podcast however you want and whatever you want. And then there's a lot of post-production people will do. So some editors or some editing tools will do some post-production. They'll do pieces of it. And I don't want to get into the whole like how to do a podcast thing. Seeks enters that space where it'll do all the audio post-production stuff for you using AI. So if the levels are off or they're staticky or whatever issues you run into when you're recording, just as a note, it's always better to not have the issues. And it's way easier to work with if you don't have the issues.
Prevention is the best medicine, right?
But,
Prevention is the best medicine.
right. But it happens, dogs are barking or cars are driving, whatever the problem is. So it'll help with that if you want. And then it'll do all this AI stuff in the background as well for show notes. So a lot of, if you're into podcasting, the description, someone usually writes that. The chapters or the points in the video that you can kind of click on, that'll give you the topics. Someone generally does that. You're still
timestamps, kind of
timestamps, exactly.
Yeah,
and so you can auto generate them. Some software does it. Some AI software will do it too. I find that most of it's pretty bad. And then if you are generating it in a lot of editing software, you can't really edit it super easily. It just kind of like it's a one and done thing, and then you're stuck with it. And so if that's what you want, cool. I'll also say that Spotify and Apple, which are the two biggest podcast distribution platforms, will automatically do chapter tagging or timestamping. YouTube video will do that as well. If that's what you want, great. I love
Can you override that option?
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
Yep. And so you can
you could use Seeks, and then if you like the generated timestamps better, you just override the
yeah, exactly. And
Apple,
so the way that
right?
Spotify, Apple, and YouTube work is that if you supply your own, they'll default to that. And if you don't supply anything, they'll do it for you. And so I get a lot of criticism of like, well, why wouldn't I just do that? I'm the creator of the content. I want to be able to shape how the audience interacts with it. And so if you want to just outsource that to Apple's AI or Spotify's AI or YouTube's AI, that's your choice. You totally can. I don't want to do that. And I find that like they're pretty good, to be honest. Like it's 80% of the way there. If you are happy with your content being represented 80% of the way there, then use it, right? And especially with like chapters and timestamping, that kind of stuff, sometimes I'll use it to call out specific things. Like not necessarily, it might be like topically relevant to like the segment or the podcast that we're doing, but I'll want to like give it a marker because I think people will be interested in it. And I think I've said this before, but I look at timestamps and chapters as ways for the audience to engage in the things that they're interested in or potentially interested in, and not have to be hold into the whole podcast to have to watch the thing. Or if you want to go back and reference it in the past or send us a clip to somebody, it's a lot easier to do that. I find the trend is now becoming going back to, we're not going to enable the timestamps in the chapters because we want you to be quote unquote engaged through the whole content. And I think that's just wrong. Like it's the same way with social media. I think the consumer of the content needs to be empowered and in charge of what they're doing or listening to, and not like trapped into it. Your mileage, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I do want to highlight that point about using the chapters or timestamps more intentionally. It does depend on the kind of content that you're sharing, right? For a lot of our content, we do jump around a bit. So we've called out before that there might be some topics of interest and some not. So the timestamps are used to highlight those. But even if you're generating something, or if your content is very cohesive, using the timestamps more creatively as like here's something I want you guys to listen to, or here's something I want to call out, I think it's a very clever use of that space and that time. So it's a cool idea that I think people should think about more if they do have a podcast or something along those lines of using that feature more as a highlight reel rather than a chapter breakout.
Yeah, and I'm sure the platforms use those as part of the algorithmic push and stuff too, so you might be hurting yourself there. But I think another, I guess, tip that relates to this is like you really want to limit it to like, I would say 3 to 5 chapters or timestamps per like 30-minute chunk, because I have seen some content that is like meticulously
every 10 seconds you have a new timestamp. Every 10 seconds you have a new time.
Folks might be into that, but I think like you might want to reframe how you're doing stuff. You might be jumping around too much, or you might be over indexing and it actually becomes more complicated. So just maybe calling out. But yeah, so that's the gist of the tool. This is just a simple landing page to get in. You can, sign up for an account. It's a free account. We're not charging to get in. There's no subscription, that kind of stuff. That was really important in the decision. And I guess maybe to take a step back, I've been using the back end of this. This is a client server app. So what you're seeing is the client and the interface that humans will interact with to use it. And then all the magic happens on servers in the cloud, basically. So I've been using the servers in the cloud for, I don't know, 9 months on this very podcast. So the timestamps you're getting, the descriptions you're getting, some other stuff is all AI generated. I know there people have really strong opinions about that in 2025. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, I don't have the time to go through and write a very good description every time. I don't have the time to meticulously watch an episode, edit it, and then timestamp it. I just don't. And I talked about this before too. The podcast doesn't really make money. It's definitely not profitable. So if you want to see more polish, you can go Patreon pay. Like, that's where we're at, folks. Like, I like doing the podcast. I think other people like listening to the podcast. We obviously have an audience. People are listening. I appreciate that. But there's only a certain amount of like energy and time I'm willing to put into this in my life. And this tool has helped remove an hour of work for me. And so there's a real tangible benefit for the software and also my life. And so I was like, this is great. We've talked about it offline. You know, Nathan and I have for a while. And I don't remember if it's my idea or your idea, but it's like, I should just like throw a UI on this and like make it happen. Always easier said than done. The product that I'm using to build the UI, I think I mentioned it, FlutterFlow. It's not an endorsement. I'm not sponsored. I'm a customer. It's pretty good. Like everything, there's pros and cons, but if you want a easy to design and use kind of drag and drop, what you see is what you get interface, it's about as good as you can get. And then again, it's one of the only platforms out there that will do web, Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, even Linux, I believe. Your mileage is going to vary on how compatible things are or not. You're going to run into all sorts of crazy things, but they've really took on a hard to manage problem, which Flutter is already trying to tackle. And then they made it so much easier to use.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, we were talking a little bit before, there's a lot of powerful functions in there to do all the API calls and to do a lot of the logic-y stuff, the user authentication. I'm very confident that you could get I think they have a free trial still. Maybe they don't. I don't know. If they have a free trial, I'm very confident you can have an app up and running in 5 minutes or less. Basic login, create all the user crap, get you to some kind of a page. Like, you're not going to have an awesome app, but it will work. And that is something then you can then build on.
Right. And it's separate from working with an LLM. It's just using FlutterFlow to build an app.
Yep.
You can do very quickly.
Well, in the vibe code thing, it's interesting because they do have LLM functionality built in. I think you have to have a plan
One of the pro model. Yeah, sure. One of the pro plans.
For a while it was everywhere, but yeah, and it works really well. So like all things AI, your mileage is going to vary, and it's how you use it. And it's a little bit of the luck of the system of how this instruction is interpreted. But you can describe it, a page, what you want it to do. I want to have the way that I guess I found that it works really well is that I say I want a user profile page. I want the name, the email, the reset password button, the delete account, like all that stuff you would want. Generate it and use these colors or use my color scheme or here's a logo or however you want to like kind of make it your own. And then it'll give you just kind of a skeleton page. And like, it doesn't do all of the stuff that I described, but the text box for your name is there. And then you match that to a variable in your database to pull the name in. And so instead of sitting there and dragging and dropping fields and trying to like get everything perfectly aligned, and like that's the shit that I'm bad at and I really hate about UI. I think everyone who's done UI is like, yeah, that's exactly why everybody hates.
And then you have the weirdos who love it.
I know, right? I love working with them because they're usually really good at it, and then I don't have to do it. So yeah, all of this UI is designed by me, I should say. And so I am not a UI designer. I'm a product person.
You can tell.
I know, right? I have a very strong opinion on UI. And this is not something that I would that's not true. I'd probably ship this as like an MVP, which I have.
Yeah.
But, it's functional. It's designed to be a functional UI, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, it's so there's vibe coding, I guess, built into this platform as well. It'll help you also with some of the AI call logic or like interaction logic. When you click a button or tap a button in an app, that's an action, and then it'll go do whatever the button says you're going to do. So all that someone has to go through and program it, and it has a lot of stuff within FlutterFlow that helps you do that and be more efficient. The team stuff works great. So you can pull in like your designer, you can pull in other engineers. everybody can collaborate, in real time. So, yes, you can do this by yourself and kind of be a multiplier, but it also works really well with the team environment as well. We found it's pretty good. So yeah, so that's kind of a little bit of that. Just your standard boilerplate stuff. You have your little sign up thing. You come in here, you can do your thing, using Movie Magic. I'm already signed in.
Yeah.
And then, so once you sign up for an account and get in, it's a simple 2-step process. Again, we've discussed, I am not a UI designer. This is a B2B tool designed for people who hopefully know what they're doing or want to accomplish, and it should be very easy for them to use. This is not a tool that some random person is going to encounter and be like, I think I'm going to use this today. And maybe you will. I like to think that it's probably accessible and approachable enough for anyone to figure out. I could be wrong.
Prevent you're wrong here.
But yeah, so,
blast it with the email saying,
know, right?
How do I use this thing?
Exactly. Yeah. support@seeks.com. Blow it up. So yeah, I was thinking, I don't even know if there is a way to get support. I don't know that the email is there, but if you get a bounce back, it's not.
How lucky do you feel?
It's support roulette. So yeah, step 1, you just enter your podcast name, you enter your episode name, pretty straightforward. And step 2 is choose your own adventure. So you can run Seeks Lite or Seeks Pro. Why the names? Because I wanted a way to differentiate between two things that most people probably resonate with. There's a little bit of a description for both, and there's also a nice little table here to compare the two editions. TLDR, Pro will do all the AI audio stuff to your file. If you don't want the AI audio stuff and you just want the show notes, chapter summaries, timestamps, description, all that kind of stuff, just run the Lite. It's a one-time fee for either. So it's 99 cents to run Lite. It's $199 to run Pro. Those could change in the future. But the idea was that AI does cost money to run. There are electrons at play. Right. The server costs money to serve this stuff. Like there's costs there, but I wanted to keep the cost low so that people could use it and get value from it without trying to do the thing a lot of SaaS or software as a service companies try to do and just extract value out of businesses or extract value out of the economy. That SaaS model does make sense in some instances. Like for this, at this current stage, it's not. We talked a little bit before we started recording. There's some SaaS ideas I have for this that we may or may not implement. We'll see. But right now, it's you pay for what you get. And I want more software to be like that because that's how it used to be. And that's how everything else in the world is, right?
Right.
Even electricity, I think, you technically have a subscription, but you're only paying for what you use, right?
Right. Yeah. I think that's the key point to double down on here is the pricing models are not arbitrary, right? The audio processing takes compute, which costs money. Yeah. So you have to charge more for that compared to maybe seemingly arbitrary business models by a lot of software companies, which is just a subscription service where you just use the product. You could be a little bit more either granular or more intentional about how you break out the feature set for utility. I think that's what Andrew and I both think about a lot is how do you not lock people out, but break down some of the functional pieces so that you can still use it without having to pay high costs that are set by whatever business model software decides to use.
And a way to do this would be to chalk up margin for Lite because the cost of running the Lite job, if you would, is less than running the Pro job. And I could have just bundled the features all into one, click a button and do it. And if you don't want to use the Pro audio enhanced stuff, then I just make higher margin, which is something you can do. I don't want to. I want to, but I also think like from like a business customer perspective, I think it's a better product for the customer. It's more approachable for the customer for this model. Who might use this? Well, anyone who has a podcast can use this, right? So there's everybody on earth could be my customer. Realistically, the target market for this is folks in podcasting who want to provide a higher level of polish on their podcast without a massive subscription or a lot of money, who don't have the technical skills to either figure it out or want to figure. Right. I know a lot of people in the audience are technical. They're like, oh, I could do this and blah, 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 blah. Maybe. But a lot of people don't. Right. Like, we vibe coded it. We could talk a little bit about it. I think once we kind of see the result, be easier to vibe code. But like, sure. Yeah, you can vibe code anything. It's just how much time and energy you want to put into it. And I'm hoping to see this model of people vibe coding software and then putting it out, and instead of trying to be, some enterprise $40 a month podcast processing tool, that they put it out more as like a small business model or like a fee for service type of model where you're like, yeah, I built this thing. I spent time on it. A team spent time on it and energy on it. And there's like an actual cost of electrons flowing through. It's pretty negligible at scale, but like there's a cost. But here's your little side hustle. And maybe this doesn't make you millions or billions of dollars, but it pays your rent, or it pays for your car, or it pays you to go out to dinner at a really nice place once a month, or whatever your goals are. And I think that's what I'm really trying to embody in this project specifically is, one, the question was like, does it work? Does vibe coding work? Can it happen? The answer is yes, looking at it. Part two is like, is this a viable, like you hear like everybody's going to be an entrepreneur and everyone's going to be a side. Sure. I think the state of vibe coding today is such that, yes, if you want to spend the time to do it and you're curious, you could figure it out and you could build an app. I'm a little dubious that you could build anything that could really compete long term.
Sure.
Right? Because like a lot of the vibe coding apps are like, I have this idea for a thing and then I do it. That's like, it does a thing. Well, most software does more than a thing. Mm-hmm. And you'll either get rolled into a feature set of another product, or you'll be obsoleted, or people will just use it for the thing and then you kind of die off. Having a long-term product in a vibe coding world, I think is pretty challenging, especially as like a solo person. If you're trying to like figure something out, I would say start small. I think a lot of the time too, people try to vibe code that I'm going to create Facebook, and it's like, nah, Facebook was created by hundreds of people over many years. Like you're not doing it. It's just not happening. Now, could you create a social platform for you and your friends to send pictures and messages back and forth? 100%. You could probably do that in a few days if you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Don't
One
know
disclaimer I will throw there. Yeah, I was going to say, even you think you do know what you're doing, try to be cognizant with anything that has personally identifiable information, because a lot of these vibe coded apps, they're getting better, but I do still doubt that they have the full understanding of what security is. A while back, we called out an app, I think it was T or whatever. I did not know this. You called this out, Andrew, but it was very much a vibe coded mess that someone had just threw up online. So you could build stuff, you could put it up online, but anytime you're talking about PII, please be careful.
No, 100%.
Very careful.
And like collect less than you think you need. And so for the purposes of this, we didn't really talk through this sign up, but yeah, you can put your name in if you want, or you can put anything in. We don't check. I don't really care. Your email's got to be real because there's money coming through, right? So that's part of the anti-fraud stuff. If you submit your credit card, that's got to be real too, because again, it's real money. It's real fraud if you don't put in real stuff or someone else's. And that's it. Through the billing process, it's all handled through Stripe. They're a very large payment processor, very common, popular. If you haven't heard of them before, I don't handle any of that data. They have software that I've embedded in the product so that relationship is really with them. And like, it's on behalf of my company, but I don't store the credit card. I don't process the credit card. That all happens through them. They have fraud blocking and stuff that we're using on there to cut down on that. If there's any sort of like refunding or anything like that, that would all be handled through that whole mechanism. And so like I could theoretically build that all myself, which you shouldn't. You should never do that, really, frankly, unless you have a really good reason to. And if you don't know what those reasons are, then you shouldn't do it.
Right.
I've built that stuff. Like I just full transparency. Like don't do it. just don't. Again, unless you need to, and then you would know why. And there's a little bit of a fee on that, right? So they charge, and that's again part of the charge of the service is to make sure those fees are covered because you're processing your credit card. Anytime you do a fee, someone's got to get more money in the system. Yeah, so that's that. So when you do that, you get dumped in the library, and then this is your, I guess we'll call this the editing, or we call it the library, and this is where the podcast that you've sent to the server for processing happens. And so you get summary, timestamps for key moments through the chapters. And then if you elect to get audio processing, we give you a file that you can download. There's download buttons up here if you're watching. So it'll just be ready to go. You can upload it today. The key thing I think that Seeeks does that a lot of other software doesn't, or maybe competitors, they don't actually embed that information into the MP3 enclosure. And so MP3 is effectively a folder for your audio, and the audio inside is, we'll just call it different for sake of high level purposes. And what I mean by saying the enclosure is that file.mp3 has all sorts of other information inside of it other than just the audio bits that reproduce the audio that give information. And so anyone who's ever ripped a CD in the past, you get track 1, track 2, track 3, all the kids are like, well, CD, what is that? We used to have music on physical media, children.
Even before that, cassettes.
I know, cassettes, records.
Yeah.
But when you'd rip a CD, you'd get all that data, you get all the audio data, and put it in an MP3 for you. But the track name, the artist name, the album description, all that kind of stuff wasn't there. There's services that have been created to fill that information, but all of that metadata, we call it, sits in that enclosure. And so a lot of the editing tools don't do that for some reason. It kind of sucks, to be honest. Like, having built this thing with vibe coding, yes. So I was like, hey, I want to embed this information in the enclosure. It's easy, right? No, it's not at all. It's like, unfortunately, way harder than that. But this was one of the problems that I was having with the podcast. And so, like, why does that matter? Some services, when you upload your podcast for distribution, will pull information out of the enclosure. Yeah. And they'll use that as part of the metadata to find your podcast or to use it. Or if your podcast player right now has little chapters, a lot of that is coming out of the actual enclosure metadata. Now, when you submit that podcast episode, you submit it with a description. And then I also include that information in the description because some other platforms won't look at the enclosure and they'll only look at what you submit.
Yeah,
and then some platforms will just make it up for you, right? And so as a creator, I want to, again, we've covered this, but I want the ability to give the audience information that I think is important. And again, it takes about a minute to process all of this stuff and make it easy. So that was pretty straightforward. Here's your little copy and paste description that you can copy and paste into whatever you want, and then a little bit bigger sized for breaking it out. The thing that Nathan heard a lot about in the back end was me complaining about how hard it is to edit goddamn anything in 2025 somehow, right?
So many conversations.
So
joking.
Well, the frustrating part I have with this is, again, so the app is mostly vibe coded. What you're seeing here is mostly vibe coded using FlutterFlow, which is a low code platform built on top of Flutter. I did use some of the AI stuff. I did a lot of drag and drop and trial and error stuff myself as well. And all the magic happens in the back end, which is an API, application program interface, that I also built with vibe. That back end was, I would say, 5% vibe coded. And I did that as an experiment to see, like, does it work? I am fully capable of building that myself. Probably would have been faster. Full transparency.
I can tell you definitely would have been faster.
Yeah, what the back end for this is not overly complex. There's a lot of different services and stuff running. So it is like, it's not like it's just some like chunk of code somewhere running. Trying to vibe code it, we talked about this again on a previous episode, where my method for this was I used Gemini for the most part. I used a little bit of Anthropic too, and was always kind of trying both throughout the process. I like Gemini better. I think I should disclaim, company is backed by Google for startups. It has nothing to do with whether or not I use Gemini. They don't make me or anything. I just frankly like it better, and I find the results are actually better for me. But I use the Gemini chat window. There's all sorts of tools that Google has, Anthropic. I think you talked a lot about that on that episode as well. The other one I'll mention, sure, OpenAI. I think I've been pretty clear on my disdain for the ethos of that company. Enough, but there, I said it. I'm so glad we're not doing this live.
Sure.
I don't know. I don't even know if I care at this point. But so I would paste my query or paste the code into the Gemini window and say, I need it to do this, or I want to do this thing. And so I think that's how most people vibe code. Maybe I could be wrong. You might be spinning up the CLI interface. You might be using like some cursor or something.
Cursor or Windsurf.
Yeah.
VS Code.
I'm dubious that someone who has no technology experience is just going to go fire up Cursor and be successful. I could be wrong.
Right.
Prove me wrong. Send a comment. I would love to be proven wrong. I think 99% of people are not that. And I also wanted to test, like, do you have to? Because
Mhm.
I hear, everybody in technology has their favorite tool that they're more than willing to share with.
Yes.
Can I just go? And so I did this again in Gemini. There's no reason you couldn't do this in Claude. There's no reason you couldn't do this in the evil other company. There's all sorts of other companies that have models that are claiming to do this sort of thing. They all probably
Mhm.
work about the same. Your mileage may vary on what they're doing behind the scenes for you. But for the back end specifically, and I did use Gemini for Flutter and FlutterFlow as well. It's maybe a whole thing, but I just want to keep me focused on the back end. So I described the task. I'm going to build this magic API and I want it to do this. I want to be able to upload an audio file. I want to be able to transform it using AI and, give me some code to do it. And it did. And it pretty much worked. I think it assumed that I was going to use the evil company. And
Hmm.
so it was like, put in your evil company access token
Oh,
here.
oh, 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 yeah, yeah, sure.
Right. And I'm like, okay, so it is an access token. So if I'm using someone else's AI models, I have an API that I'm using and I get a token, which is basically I use my password. But most people might not know what that is. So already my
Yeah.
vibe coded app doesn't work. Like it'll run and I can send assuming you can get it on a server, which is an assumption I just took out of the mix. Like I was just like, I'm not going to try to like have AI. So I did ask it. So I was like, how would I deploy this to the cloud? Right. And
Sure.
it gave me two options, either a VPS, a virtual private server, where you run the code on that and you run the OS and all that kind of stuff. And then it also gave me options for, I don't remember exactly what cloud
Gotta
functions
be
it
cloud. I
was,
was gonna
but
say it could be cloud deployment of some
yeah,
sort.
some kind of
Sure.
cloud deployment. Pros and cons for both of those. Most people probably don't know anything we're talking about now. So there's a pretty big bar to vibe coding. However, if you Googled it or even used AI and said, hey, I don't know what a VPS is or how I would go about getting one and running this, help me, it will. And it's pretty good. Like I was using Gemini 2.5 for most of this. Gemini 3 has gotten remarkably better. And it's kind of impressive to know that it even got that much better.
Agreed. Yeah.
But yeah, it'll tell you how to do it. And it's mostly right. And it mostly works. And you still have to use your brain, but it'll get you there. And so that was kind of the pattern. And if I ran the code and it didn't work, I'd say, this is the error I got. It would spit out some more code or tell me, oh, yeah, you obviously made this mistake. And I'm literally just copying and pasting it in between the server and the. I don't recommend this workflow at all. Maybe we should be clear on that, right? But it does work. And I feel like, again, this is how most people are going to, and like it works. Like, don't be discouraged by trying this method. And you don't have to run a lot of this stuff on a server. If you have a Mac or a Linux computer, if you have a Linux computer, you probably don't need to listen to this. But like if you have a
Yeah.
Mac, a lot of this stuff will run very easily. If you have a Windows computer, it will depends on what you're trying to do. But Windows subsystem for Linux, you can ask the AI about that or Google it. Works super, super well for this stuff as well. So in 2025, like you can run a localized version of just about anything. Like you're going to be limited by what your computer can do, but most computers in 2025 are more than powerful enough for you to play around with this kind of stuff and experiment. Nice thing about that is you don't have to get the cloud running. You don't have to worry about security quite as much. Like there's some caveats, of course, but if you want to just try to experiment and see, like, can I vibe code my own app and get it running on my own computer? Try it.
There's also a level up where, for those who have like almost no experience, there are services out there. Not trying to plug any of them, but Lovable is a big one. Replit is also one. They abstract a lot of the stuff that Andrew was just talking about when
Yeah.
it comes to like deployment and all that, right? So if you want to start at a lower bar, play around with those apps and see what those look like.
No, 100%. Like I don't like to make recommendations for tools or stuff, but yeah,
Sure.
they're both
Yeah.
reputable companies. They both work
Mhm.
to an extent. Part of the abstraction of them helping you run stuff is that they limit what you can do. But again, if you can't get done what you think you should be able to get done, you can ask AI for recommendations. And that's where the actual engineering pieces start to enter into vibe coding. I found this pretty quickly on, and like I'm probably not good to experiment with this because like I have a very strong background in building technology. I know the terminology. I tried to like abstract it out enough to be like, this is error that I'm getting when I run this, and not it's not working because blank or whatever.
Yeah.
I also have write code. Not good at. We've talked about this. I hate doing it. It's not. not my passion in life. I can do it. But that's also something for me personally with vibe coding. The actual writing of the code and remembering all the libraries and all that, it just isn't in my lexicon because I don't do it all the time. So I know enough about the technology to have AI do a lot of the heavy lifting. Yes, you can kind of copy and paste back and forth with errors. I did run into, especially with Gemini 2.5, Gemini 3 has gotten a lot better, but Gemini 2.5 would start to get into a loop at some point where you just couldn't have it solve its own problem because it would keep jumping back and forth between different modalities of troubleshooting. And so then I would have to use my brain and say like, why isn't this working, Andrew? And sometimes I would know, sometimes I wouldn't. And if I didn't know, one of the strategies that I think works really well with vibe coding is asking the AI, how do I know that this audio file is getting received? And it'll say, well, that's a great question. And then it'll probably have you like, most of this is written in Python. Also, again, because it's a very common language, it's probably one of the most common languages for people. And AI is really good at writing Python for the most part, asterisks, but it's pretty. And so it would give me a bunch of print statements. It would say, put these print statements in, these functions or whatever. And then I could literally see it in the service logs of file was received. And it likes to do emojis for some reason, which I find unsettling.
It's an easy way to read, to be honest. Like when you're looking at a bunch of logs, seeing an emoji, you're like, oh, okay, that's what I need to look for.
Well, back in my day, we didn't have emojis and logs. We had to parse our own logs with our own command line tools. Grep and set and awk and all this.
They're still used today, to be honest. Still used today.
I do things the old way, and the kids are like, how did you get all that information? And I'm like, because the tools have been here since the 70s. But so that was really helpful. And then if, so I'm uploading the audio. Okay, now I got that. Now how do I get it to AI and process? And okay, I got the summary, but I didn't get the timestamps. Well, how do I know what happened? And so like, you don't want to necessarily push that kind of a code to production, but if you're just trying to learn or you're just trying to understand, that's a really great way that then you can start screwing around with the code and be like, well, I think it should do this. Oh, it doesn't work now. Okay, I broke that. Now I go back and do it. So you can teach yourself to code, I think, pretty well with vibe coding. And it was impressive, I will say. And again, I'm not trying to call it Gemini specifically. I think it's better for code. That's a hot, controversial thing because I know there's a lot of Claudes in the audience who are into that too. I don't think it's bad. I just think if you understand how to work with Gemini, it's unbelievably.
Yeah, I don't doubt that either.
It's incredible. And it took me a while to kind of, and I'm sure Claude's probably the same way. If I sat with Claude and did enough vibe coding with it, I'd kind of figure out what you need to give it. But so part of the vibe coding too is like when I started doing this experiment, it took about 3 months to build the back end and the front end to a point where it worked. Had I did it myself a month or less, I don't know if it would. It's hard to try to extrapolate. But the thing that was like a huge game changer was I was having to copy and paste the whole code block, into Gemini. Eventually the code gets too big and you lose context. But being able to add your repo to the chat and have it read when everyone else probably like really technical is like, well, yeah, dummy. But yeah, but remember, I'm vibe coding. I don't know what a repo is maybe. That's okay. Ask AI. A repo is where you store the code that you're building so other people can use it. It'll be versioned, that kind of stuff. And so I got to the point where I was like, this is just not working anymore because the code is so big. There's other services now that have entered the picture. That's not just the AI. There's a bunch of workers going. The AI was losing context as to what the hell was even going on. And it was starting to jump around. Well, it's clearly this problem. Well, it's not. That works really well. I know it's in the API itself. How do I fix it? And then being able to attach the actual repos and all the magic that they're doing in the backend was transformational. It unblocked a lot of the problems that I heard about vibe coding initially into a whole nother level. And again, is this going to replace your software development team? No, it's not. Is it going to make your software development team a lot better? Yes, it is. Is it going to make your product people really good if you let them in there? Absolutely. Like you will be able to understand your code base. Because if you don't, you can ask AI. Are you going to be an expert? No. But you can go to an engineer and say, hey, when we create an account in our app and it does all this stuff in the background, and the support team or the billing team is having this issue, I think this is where we're getting our wires crossed, or we're giving the right information to the event bus, but some other person's system isn't consuming it correctly, or whatever the problem might be. Totally changes the paradigm of the conversation you have as a development, right? It could make it worse too, but I think it's probably like, as soon as you have the curiosity to do it. There's a lot of product people who want to just be in meetings all day and like bark orders to the product team, and that's not how I operate ever. There's a lot that like,
right.
Nathan's nodding for those of you on audio.
I refrain from saying anything that might harm me in the future.
Yeah, for sure. No, there's a lot of shitty product people out there. I'll say it. And if you're not curious, you don't, there's tangent. There's a lot of product people who don't use their own product. That's a huge problem. Right. There's a lot of engineers who don't either. That's a little different, but like there's a lot, you have to use your own product, folks. And if you're working in an industry where you can't use your product, it's really hard, but like you got to figure out a way to like actually understand. You got to do it. You got to put in the time to use your stuff. And it blows my mind how many product people don't use their stuff. It's like, there's a piece of software that I don't think I'll mention. It was interesting because I was looking at the company and they actually have a product position open that it's supposed to own the piece of the software that I have a problem with. We've talked about this offline, and I was like, maybe I should apply to this just because I want to be in the interview and be like, do you actually use the product that you're responsible for? Because it's really obvious you don't, because if you did, you would. There's always a lot of opinion in product and how things should be used or not. But this issue is so irritating and as a core function of how you interact with the product. It's really obvious to me that no one on the team is actually using the product in a way that they're intending it to be used. Like, it works, and I can totally see the test case in my mind where, yep, it works. We check it off. It's a great idea. We love it. But when you actually try to run a pipeline of a creative workflow through it, it fails miserably at a certain scale that is not unreasonable for everybody who uses the product to run it. I'll leave it at that. So yeah, you can, total tangent aside, the big feature for this was the ability to be able to modify. So this is all AI generated. You can come in here and you can change things. So like names of stuff, AI gets wrong. There are ways to fix it. Seeeks doesn't try super hard. I don't know what else to say. Like it's a very, very, very difficult problem. And I think it's easier to this is the human in the loop part of AI that I believe so much on. So again, if I were to go in and write a description and listen to the whole thing and go back and do timestamps, and anyone who's ever done video or audio work knows that that's tedious. There's no shortcut typically in that either. It just takes time. This will get you 80% of the way there. You can go in, you can change stuff. If you don't like how it was generated or you want to add or remove stuff, really simple to do. You just come in, you do it, you click save changes, and you wait a few seconds and it's done. And then it'll update the enclosure if you're on Pro. If you're not on Pro, it'll just give you the copy and pastables to upload along with your file. It's that simple. And I want to talk a little bit about that too, that with a lot of the AI stuff, yes, I could easily just have this design. So you upload your file, Seeeks does all this AI stuff, and then it uploads it to YouTube or uploads it to Spotify or Apple or wherever you want to go. But I firmly believe that the creator needs to be in control still. In addition to that, human judgment always needs to be in the loop with artificial intelligence. If it's ML, if it's AI or whatever, like, yes, go do all the work, try to make it as easy as you can with people, but it's not good enough and it's too variable to actually work. So many people dance around this. And I can't stand it because AI works very well. So you get people in camps where AI doesn't work for anything. Bullshit. It works very well. I vibe coded this whole thing. It works, folks.
Right.
Is it perfect? Is it going to take over an editor's job? Is it going to take over my job? No, it's not. But it makes it, like, again, I used to do this by hand because I wanted people to have chapters. I could have easily also just said, I don't care about chapters and just listen to the whole episode. It's a choice. I wanted to provide a better experience. And so I think even with the AI assistant, and if you don't closely look at it, it gets it close enough. Again, names get a little weird. It'll make mistakes. It's AI. Like, people make mistakes. I make mistakes. Anybody who's ever seen my descriptions that I've written are like, that's AI. I'm like, no, that's 100% me, and it's bad.
I wonder if someone could tell the difference which is reading what you wrote versus
I get
AI.
accused of using AI. And so it's interesting because I typically don't use AI generated content and put it out, if that makes sense. So like this is a little bit different because I don't write. So in any other normal work that I do, I use AI more as a thought partner and not as a like producer or contributor, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't write
Yeah.
emails with AI. I'll use AI to proofread an email, and if I say something wrong or whatever, it'll help correct me, or I'll ask it to make, is this clear? Can I make it clearer? That's the thought partner piece, but I don't like copy and that's not how I use it. I don't think that's the best way to use it. For something like this though, again, 80% of the time, I think it's right. I'll usually add a couple sentences, or if it words things in a weird way, I'll change the content. So for me, it's also a little bit of a different use. But I've spent a lot of time on this before even this is, come to fruition. And like, I don't know that a human could do it better for the time commitment. For most, again, if this is your job and your YouTube, you're dependent on it, you probably want a person to. It's not my job. I guess it's a hobby. I mean, like, again, it's not profitable. I don't know what this is. It's a podcast. Right? I know. I don't know what it is.
Hobbies don't have to be profitable. Yeah, hobbies don't have to be profitable. Yeah.
Right? So yeah, I think of it as a hobby.
Enjoy doing it.
So anyway, so that's Seeeks. And you can go check it out. And
play with it a little bit.
Yeah, I think I'm going to talk more about the vibe coding thing and like actually break it down for folks. Because this is more kind of, I guess, an overview. I'm almost thinking about showing people how I did it, maybe doing like a recording of like that.
Like a walkthrough.
Yeah. But we'll see.
Yeah. There are definitely things that I can, maybe, depends on your audience. I may go too deep, but always happy to provide a second perspective on that stuff because I work with that.
Well, maybe.
Everything you mentioned, we've talked a little bit. I don't work the way that you work.
No,
when it comes to like the vibe coding piece, right?
Maybe it would be fun, and I don't want to commit us to this next podcast because it is the holidays, but maybe in the near future, we could just develop a very quick app on a podcast.
Oh, would be even better if we did a live session and had people giving us suggestions.
Oh, that would be fun.
I don't know what I'm signing us up for, but that would be fun. We could all collaborate on building a product over that.
That would be actually, I really love that idea. And like, we can scope it so it's not insane.
Yeah. I mean, we'll have to think about how deep we want to do it, whether it's just a website to start, or if it's an actual PWA, or if it's just
with FlutterFlow, you just check a box.
You could just do it. Yeah. Try and get a FlutterFlow sponsor.
I know some people over there. I'm not sponsored. I want to be clear. It's not sponsored. The software's good. It works. It has problems too, just like everything else. But I know it, right? I've been using it for a while. But I also think it's probably the easiest way for people to really dive into. You can use templates. Anyway, next time.
You can find us at 3reate.com. It's like the word create, but with a 3 instead of the C. As always, we encourage you to listen, watch, do. We'll see you next time. You can support this podcast at patreon.com/3reate or at ko-fi.com/3reate. Thanks for listening.